we had about $2,000, but 2,700 so far. I don't know, I think the notice is still coming in. The only thing is, last year, Aaron and I made we had 75 children. This year they made 100, they only had 12 children.
Only 12? Last year, how many?
75, we ran out. Because Karen and I thought, well, she did 20 cookies, I did 20 lollipops. We thought, okay, 40. Then we started cookies from the cookie table. Jim Hopper went down to Giant, bought more treats because we ran out. And then, Craig told me last night they only had cookies.
Did they not know? What's like the scavenger hunt?
Oh, it's advertised. A little counting and everything.
Yeah, I think it's clear, we just, those of us who were involved in scavenger hunt, we just couldn't have as many kids. But it ebbs and flows.
Maybe there weren't as many kids that came overall.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, that's fine. But as soon as they came in the door, they was. Pretty much. See what's come back. Somebody wanted to. Overall, we didn't see the kids and children.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was a good event yesterday. Thank you for everyone. Some planning and pulling off of this event. Each year, it'll be different. This, I think went well from where I was standing. Okay, I need to
Hey, Craigie, you want to sign me in?
let you know. What's your name? Next Sunday, we're having class. You may have, Christian Aid had to make a quick decision this week because we determined we weren't going to have, leadership for some of the children's classes this coming Sunday. So that just has to do with, people being away for the Thanksgiving weekend. Someone couldn't cover her class. She's trying to get others and they weren't going to be in town. So it just made sense to cancel the children's classes. Didn't want to do that, but don't have coverage. But I think one person said, does that mean you're not having? No, we're having class, so. So the adult class will be exclusive. Right or wrong, that's what the Christian decision. You don't have leadership. Or do.
So is it okay if we bring our children with us?
Yeah, sure. Bring them here. Put some toys over there. Paul brings his daughter, one of his daughters. I don't think anybody else can make that claim at the moment.
Your signal's out.
Yeah, Randy, you could make it if Randy would. Right, all right.
Oh, can I say something?
Right.
We're taking Ally in here.
Oh, yeah.
It was suggested, and I think it's a good suggestion. Since Jake and Alan are such, faithful members of this class, that maybe we do something for them. Their baby is due at the end of December. So this is my idea. If you have a better idea, feel free to tell me. But maybe we can just collect some money and then I'll make a pretty little card and we can just give them money in a card unless you think of something better.
Okay.
So I'll be
that's
collecting
something that
money.
makes you think, even if there's a shower, they get things, they can get something, they see they need.
Right. Right.
On
But
the-
you have a new
I
baby.
think we can.
Gonna be.
I know, I bought
I
mine.
know about that.
So,
Yeah.
Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
What you wanted. I guess the last collection will be the Sunday. before Christmas.
Let's see, do we know what her due date
The end of December.
is? Yeah, that's right.
So
Could be.
When should I, when do you want it, when do you want me to?
That's fine. Yeah, why don't you-
Yeah. Whenever you get it to me.
Yeah.
Put it cut off.
Just, yeah, let's.
Okay.
I'm up there.
So one of them is like. So.
How about the 14th? 13th or 14th is the Sunday.
Okay, by December 14th.
Well, you know what, once we can do it earlier, I mean, it's not hard just to get money, you could give that to them if they were here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how about, what's that?
Seven.
Well,
Seven.
30th is next Sunday, so let's do the 7th.
Do the 7th, and then we'll get to them on the 15th.
They're here.
Yeah,
Maybe somebody will volunteer to make a little cake or cupcakes or something. You just never know.
well, they'll
Yeah,
be
she was
coming.
talking. Yeah, you agree, Sandy?
I was not listening.
Smart lady.
About.
Cupcakes.
You'll do cupcakes. Thank
Are
you.
they having a go?
Yeah,
I think it's a boy.
yeah.
So I'm sorry.
I want to think of.
No, it was volunteering you to make the cake.
Yeah. It's a boy because they have the middle name figured out, but not the first name, and the middle name has to be a relative. Their own parent or grandparent.
So by December 7th, give me money so I can go Christmas shop.
And the goal is that we will try to have it on cupcakes on the 14th, but what if they don't come?
I'll put them in the freezer just to get them out.
Okay.
Obviously.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I said, we eat the cupcakes and try to get them up.
That'll work too.
You heard the cupcake count here.
Thank you for request.
What? He's an easy crowd. Let's say, if they don't come, and she says, you don't freeze the cupcakes, so what happened?
Oh, we go.
We can always.
They're here when
decorate
you-
wrapping.
Yeah, and I meant to bring an envelope, I'll just put paper.
Yeah.
Keep it separate.
Paper, so 2 days or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, thanks for your participation in this. We're gonna move on. We're working with Mark, the Transfiguration Pass. John does not have this in his gospel, but the other two synoptic gospels do, but Matthew. We're dealing with Mark's version, and we will bring in Matthew and Luke when at any time or when it feels appropriate. So, but we started off, we have a passage. This is the traditional transfiguration passage, Mark 9:2-13. Last time we worked at just doing a general reading through, because when you're applying the aspects and elements of exegesis to a passage, it's important to make sure you know what you're dealing with.
Yes.
What is in your passage? What's the content? Who are the characters? What's the setting? So Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up to the top of the mountain, and then Elijah and Moses show up. So we have a lot going on here. So we went through that. We brought in other translations, and so we now have a feel for our passage. What I'd like to do today, before we dive into the passage with all the issues and questions that have come up so far, which have been great questions, and you're getting into it, but before we absolutely get into it, sometimes it's helpful to take the passage and break it down into subunits or sections. So we outline the passage. We try to figure out what the structure of the passage is. And I think I'm a big one to outline passages when I'm working with a particular passage, I think coming up with an outline helps. So if you look at the passage itself and just start with verse 2. Can you find some subsections or subunits of the passage? How does this, is it best to read this passage all in one unit, or can we break it down into subunits?
Mine has paragraphs.
Maybe. Okay,
Nice.
that's fine, and we may or may not want to go with those. But we may want to, that's a good suggestion. How does the translation divide these things into your paragraphs? So what do you think the first subunit would be? Any thoughts?
They went into the mountain alone. Well,
Well, we're going to start with 2.
oh, Jesus, Peter, James, and John.
Okay. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, led them up top of the mountain by themselves, and we talked about that, and he was transfigured before them, comma. So I don't think we want to break it there, so we keep going into 3.
It's kind of a nice introduction. It's who, where, when, and what. You know? So-
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Just that first verse.
And his clothes became dazzling bright, such as no one on earth could brighten them. So,
David, I'm suggesting that them going into the mountain is the first set. And then the second set is that he was transfigured in his skin.
yeah, but what about the fact that that's mid-sentence?
It's not.
It's not.
Can we have a period in ours?
Oh, you have a period?
Yeah.
Okay, so we could do verse 2.
Hey,
It's verse 2, part
No.
A.
he was transfigured in front of you. Starts with your sense.
Oh, I see, I thought that was in verse 3. Verse 2A. Intro.
It's the setting.
How's that? Intro setting. And then 2B.
Three.
Is the transfiguration.
And the 2, verse B.
What's that?
And verse B, and 3.
And 3.
2 and 2B.
Yeah, I got you. All right. Okay, so those are two ways to break it down. Let's keep going. So then we have verse 4.
Elijah with Moses.
And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses. How far do we want to take that? Who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us set up 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And then this is a tricky verse. And he did not know what to say there.
I think verse 4 by itself and then 5 and 6 are Peter's reaction.
Yeah, I agree.
You like that? So 9:4, we'll just say what? Elijah and Moses. And 5 and 6. Peter's reaction. Then when we come to verse 7, it begins with a then. Do your translations have that?
Can I ask a question here? Check. Verse 4 says lights, IAS. Or is that the same thing? Just a different way of writing?
It could be, not to be confused with Elisha. But let's see. I didn't bring my computer today, so I can't look up the Greek. That may be Elijah.
I have ELIAS.
What is the Greek?
Elias.
Elias, yeah. Allah.
Yeah.
That's the King James.
See,
Well, it's a Greek and it's a Greek way, that's how it appears in the Greek. And traditionally in English, we have come up with the name Elijah. Another example would be the name Isaac. In Hebrew, if I'm reading it, it says Yitzhak. And remember, Yitzhak Rabin, that's Isaac. So you have a Hebrew pronunciation, which becomes general, that's how they pronounce it. And then we have English pronunciations, which don't always match. Okay,
In the Greece, what word was used in transfiguration? Or transfiguration?
metamorpho.
Because the word transfiguration doesn't come into the English language until about the 14th, it's just one.
Yeah.
I looked it up.
Yeah, and well, that's, yeah.
no, because we spent a lot of time talking about that, so I was wondering.
Oh.
If you had looked it up. Very much. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we talked, and why don't we wait till we get to, see what we're gonna do, we're gonna look at
Because
these.
to me, it makes a difference what the original Greek word was.
Yeah, oh yeah, it does. But in that case, to what so we say Elijah, and then Linda's reading in her Bible and it says Elias. Well, Elias is what we have in the Greek. Some reason when we come to translating it into English, we come up with Elias. So it's not always transliterated in a literal sense. And as I said, talk is a good example. So that's what the Hebrew said, but for some reason, in English, we call that name in Hebrew. Isaac. So,
They say.
what do we, so now, what happens with 7?
Wow, so much that and I know it's my voice key.
Yeah. Whose voice?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's just a table.
But when then after that, there was this is my son, the beloved, so he goes, it's God speaking.
Yeah, it doesn't specifically say this is God's voice, but by inspiration. Is that a word?
Yeah, just.
Inference. By inferring, inference, that's the word, that's the noun, by inference. It has to be God. Information. Yeah, I could get information, but by inference, we have, it has to be God. This is my son and beloved, listen to him. And then in 8, suddenly when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore but one Jesus.
I think those two go together.
Yep, that's what I would do. Anybody else? God. Okay, we have a sidebar here, and that's okay. I'm not,
Trying to.
yeah. Do you have anything? Do you have a summary? Or- It's really well written. Okay, yeah, good. All right. Let's keep going. So remember, in the first class, we talked about this. We could have, the whole passage, we could have stopped here at 7:8. Some of your translations will stop at 7. But one reason we decided to keep going to 13, and the later translations will have the transfiguration from 2 to 13, is because we get into a larger discussion of what Elijah's role is in all this. So he appears here in verse 4, but then there's a larger discussion on from 9 to 13 about Elijah and why he comes up and all. So we keep going with this passage. So would we?
Wouldn't 8 be separate from 7?
It could be. I mean, it depends how detailed you want your outline to be. See, when in my outline, I put 2 and 3 together. And then I put 4 and 6 together. But as we were talking about this as a class, you want to go in a bit more detail. And I say that to say that when you're making an outline, there's no, I mean, there probably are different ways to do it, but or there definitely are different ways. And I don't want to say there's a right and a wrong way, but you can be more detailed or you can be more general.
God's voice disappears
Yeah.
and it's just suddenly left alone.
But yeah, but the reason I would put 8 and 7 is you have the voice, and this is my son, beloved, listen to him, and it's almost like you're expecting more in the back. Everything's gone. Look around, cloud's gone, God's voice is gone. Moses and Elijah are gone. So I would put those together. You could put them. So either way. And like I said, there's other, you know, there's no exactly one right way to do an outline. Now, what do you want to do with the next couple verses? Several. As they were coming down the mountain. So you definitely have a transition here. Everything goes away. Now they're coming down the mountain. He ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead could mean. Then they asked him so.
Well, it's not one little dialogue. Jesus talks to them, they kind of internalize it and respond. So it's all one little back exchange.
What, 9:13?
9 to 11. But when they ask, they internalize it, then they ask Jesus. And then where you go 9 to include his response. You go to 13, but 9 to 11 is their instructions to keep it quiet, and they do.
Well, I would say that stops with 10.
10, yeah, 9 to 10.
9 to 10. And then 11, they're asking more about Elijah, more specific. 9 to 10, he says, don't tell anyone until the resurrection. What did he say? Until the Son of Man has risen from the dead. And then 10 says, well, that's what they did. Okay. secret. And then, what do you want to do with 11, 12, and 13?
Scratch my head.
Together. I would put them on. And I did that and I titled it Elijah Who. So who we have? Have introduction and setting in 2A and then 2B to 3, we have the transfiguration where Jesus is. And that's one thing I'll talk about when we get into it. The transfiguration happens right away. It's that they go up to the mountain and it's not like they're any set up after that or gathering, whatever. It's just they go up to the top of the mountain and he's just transfigured. So, and then we put 4. Elijah and Moses appear, 5 and 6, Peter's response, 7 and 8, God's voice, 9, 10, it's a secret, 11 to 13, more of a discussion about Elijah and his role. So can you see how this might be helpful as you begin to try to come up with an interpretation of this passage and try to figure out what some of the main issues are in this passage? Coming up with an outline, then going through the. No? So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time. What I'd like to do next is then let's go through here and this will be the bulk of our discussion now on the passage. We've defined the passage 2 to 13. We could have stopped with 8, we didn't, gone all the way to 13. We read through the passage, we compared different translations, and we looked at footnotes and that kind of thing. And now we outline the passage. Now we're ready to go through and try to pull it all together and try to make sense of as many of these things as we can. Some of these things I'll not be able to make total sense of, but we do the best we can. How's that sound? Any questions? So as we work at verses 2 and 3, Mark and Matthew say 6 days. If you go to Luke's version, account of this story, he says 8 days later. Something I can't make any sense of it. It's just okay, 2 days different. And that somewhat happens sometimes when we have different accounts. Maybe that's how it came to Luke. I do think that Matthew is using Mark much closer as a source than Luke. And I will, at some point, maybe now would be a good time. I'll hang off a little bit. At one point, I do have a parallel coded in color, tell you the differences of the 3 accounts. Because we're studying Mark. But Matthew and Luke have the story. Well, why don't I do it? That way we can use it as we go.
You know, we do that a lot. We repeat things that people say. I repeated after you, David.
What?
I said, you said, where am I headed out? I said, no.
Yeah, oh, you arrive in that house. Why not? Yeah, go ahead.
Look at why were the disciples not curious about Moses? They're
Yeah.
curious about Elijah, but apparently Moses got ignored.
Yeah, a little bit. I think we can answer that when we get to verse 4, 5, and 6. I think we have to go to the book of Malachi. And so put a bookmark in that. Discuss that. We may get to it today. Right. Okay, just a brief look at this. And I don't know if you remember, we did this maybe a year ago. We took the gospel, no, the calling of Matthew, in Matthew 15, I forget where, maybe it's chapter 9. And we compared the three accounts. And the color coded. So here, the brown is where, when you look at the color code at the bottom, Matthew, Mark, and Luke is in brown. So that is the basic story, and that's where they all agree. The purple is just Matthew and Mark, and Luke doesn't have any of that. And then the red is just Luke only. What happened?
I just turned the fan off. I didn't know how to make
thank
it
you.
warmer, but I turned.
Thank you, yeah.
It's close.
Well, it is.
Says heating system.
Yeah.
The black is Matthew only. The green is Mark. And then, very rarely are you gonna have Luke or Mark. And then that tells us Luke or Mark. Well, and then
Thank you.
Luke and Matthew.
So I know that, John sort of stands alone, so is this not recorded in the book of John?
Exactly. Something is wrong here with color. Luke only. Oh, I see. Luke and Matthew, that's more of an orange. We only have a few passages that are just.
It's kind of hard to tell the orange from the red
No, I
when you're in the.
just figured that out.
Oh, yeah, we're talking.
Okay, so the brown is just where all three gospels agree, and that is the bare bones of the story. Then what you find in the purple, you have a lot of purple there. So what that tells us is both Matthew and Luke are using Mark as a source, but Matthew is much closer in his narration of the story than Luke is. Luke adds a lot of his own material, which is the red. So he's adding some things. In fact, in Luke, if you go to the back page, Luke drops 9 to 13, Mark all together. So I don't know how specific we want to do with it, work with this. I hand it out now, so when we want to refer to something comes up and we want to see in Mark, and we say, well, what does Matthew and Luke think? And we'll keep this. Look at that. But just going over it very briefly. The brown, bare bones of the story. If you look at how they go through the whole passage, Matthew is staying very close. Mark, Luke, not so much. That's what there's almost half of the story, or at least the last. At least last 5 verses, Luke doesn't include it all in his thoughts. So let's keep going. Kate, you had a question about the verb metamorpho. And
I looked it up, etymology of eating, etymology, excuse me. And what I felt was interesting, get to where my alt tabs. Okay. Now, taking this from Helps Word Study. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And also Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. Okay. Are you familiar with that? You're okay?
yeah,
Okay.
no, that's fine.
Okay. Looking at, okay, but when I was looking. It's, changing form, but in keeping with the inner reality. And it seems so that that verb specifically was chosen to mean that while the whole outward appearance of Jesus, it was kind of like, this is the show for the rubes, so it can't figure it out any other way. But the whole inner reality never changed.
Right. Yeah,
I like that, that's good.
yeah, and we had a discussion last time about metamorphosis means you are you're changing from one thing to another.
Right.
Could I make a comment on that?
Okay,
Because this is sort of been a long belief of mine, and that's that the Greek, no, the Hebrew, metanoete, and the Latin repent are like two different or quite a bit different meanings, where repent means turn around, as you were describing.
yeah,
Metamorphosis means alter mind, if you look at the actual words. And I think I like the alter mind better than the repent. Repent kind of leads you on the same point, while alter mind kind of puts you in a different place. So,
yeah.
But this is, what's that root, metamorpho?
Yeah.
Metamorpho?
Metaphor. Yeah.
Metamorpho, which would be great, yeah.
Because metamorphosis is a different word, it comes from that root,
Yeah,
but it is a different word.
I would agree with that. When we look at metamorpho in the Greek, it's talking about Jesus being radiant and his clothing is white, but he hasn't changed from a caterpillar to a butterfly.
Right. Like I said, the inner reality maintains. And it's kind of like why you had to tell stories, because many times the truth would not really, most people could not.
You can't handle the truth. Yeah. I love that movie.
Yeah,
BDAG
yes,
has two options. One, to change in a manner visible to others. And then two, to change inwardly in fundamental character or condition. And of course, they choose number one.
Yeah.
Or two.
yeah.
To change in a manner visible to others.
So metamorpho in the Greek, it has it has two ranges of meaning. It can be, transformed from the outside, but there also can be an inner transformation, and some of
No,
the,
it says that inner reality maintains, has always maintained. It was, it is, and will always be. And that I felt was the important. That's what I felt was, when I looked through the etymology,
right,
what would be.
And isn't that kind of what you're saying, there's a higher realm?
well, I was talking about repentance, the word for that, that's
Oh.
metanoete, which is, the noete is mind, right?
Yeah, weren't they just trying to find words that they couldn't find to describe something that was indescribable?
yes, exactly. So, and that takes us into verse 3, because Jesus' outward appearance changed to some degree. And when it says he was transfigured, the narrator, the author doesn't say a whole lot about that, except to go into verse 3 and say how his clothes were whiter than any white that we can manufacture here on this earth. Because remember, the footnote in my translation said it was a fuller. And we talked about what a fuller was last week. A fuller is a cloth refiner. I think Glenn, you had some thoughts about that, I remember. And so, but basically we're talking about Jesus's clothes were whiter than any kind of bleach we had on this earth could. And we talked about how bleach was done in those days as far as we know. It wasn't Clorox, but it was so that's how white the clothes of Jesus were. So, and that's about all we're going to get from the passage. If you go to Luke, let's do that on this handout.
But it's obvious that it was a non-human sort of being or form. It wasn't something that they had seen before. It wasn't human. And I guess I'm going back to what we talked about before, that this verified the divinity
Yes.
of Jesus.
Well, I think that's the whole point. These two verses for Mark, because he doesn't stress the divinity of Jesus like Matthew does, but he's bringing it in here. He's saying something has occurred to Jesus that's not going to occur to humans. And
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
go ahead.
It just from, I've got kind of a science background. And have you ever heard of, have you ever heard of anybody talking about it? It could be a static electricity phenomena.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just what I've been mulling over in my mind. But on the other
You
hand,
see static electricity. I know you can feel it, but can you see it?
well, you know, the guys that have been, what do you call those? Oh, I forget the name, or the big globes that people touch. I forget. But anyway, I mean, they're in the mountain and they're already thunder and clouds, so you kind of go, well, but anyway, it just, you know, I'd say maybe there's more or less.
Maybe lightning struck.
Well, there is a kind of silent discharge. St. Elmo's fire is a well-known phenomenon. It's a silent static discharge, and things will blow with that.
Well, I'm going to share something that I just found out recently, and I don't know enough about it to really say much. I heard it via John David and Evan Engel via Jeff Eisenweis.
Don't believe a word.
But apparently at the moment of conception, when the egg is fertilized by the sperm, there is a light in the body. There is a light, a flash of light. Is it? Well, did you understand?
Flash.
Well, I mean, I don't know about that, but there's, you know, our whole nervous system, everything has
Energy.
an electrical basis as well. Our nerves work by that, so it wouldn't surprise me a lot if there was some.
Got the different spheres in yoga
Oh, okay.
that you, I mean, you cannot see it, but you have the different chakras that will affect your body in different ways.
Yeah. Well, and when Pat and I talked about it, I said, well, you know, I've never seen it, and of course, so
It was recorded and so,
Yeah.
you know, it's a podcast actually that Jeff listened to.
Right.
And
Well, how would, you would only see it in vivo fertilization because you never see what's going on inside somebody's body. And I've never heard of anybody seeing a flash of light when they're doing in vitro
Well,
fertilization.
probably, you know, minuscule, I mean, you have to have,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
well, according to
It's not a-
Smithsonian Magazine.
Yeah. Here we go.
I mean, it talks about bands of tiny zinc particles explode from the surface of mammalian eggs when a sperm cell touches down. Watching zinc sparks fly as the egg beats the code. There's a. Excuse me.
I wouldn't describe it as a flash of light, no.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
Little sparks.
Yeah.
Well, I think perhaps you're raising this to say that,
the human body can be capable of.
Yeah.
Something extraordinary like that.
but then in comparing it here, I think the difference though would be that
It's
this,
subhuman.
yeah, this was, non-human or divine, and it just wasn't something you have to really go after. In a scientific, I mean, it was so, visible. And it was visible to the point that, it was a kind of white that became that. Yeah,
In the Eastern traditions, Orthodox and the Coptics and so on.
yeah,
They make a huge distinction between the created light as described in Genesis versus the uncreated light, which is emanated directly from the creator as a characteristic of the creator and different created light. They always put this transfiguration as the uncreated light of the divinity manifesting itself in the incarnation. And of course, have a theological reason for that.
sure. Okay,
But note says that his transfiguration is a preview of his resurrection.
Preview of his.
well, I should, I do like to distinguish between footnotes and commentaries. But yeah, so, well, that's someone's theological opinion. I probably would go the other way. We've seen this before with Moses. So this isn't totally different. Now, when we go to Luke, and someone brought this out, let's go to Luke, verse 29, it'd be the far right column. If you're on the handout. Now AJ later refused it and went up to the mount to pray, and while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed. So Luke's going a different way. You don't have any of that with Matthew and Mark. All it just says with Matthew and Mark, he was transfigured, and Luke, he's not using the Greek word metamorpho. In fact, we did talk about this last time. What Luke basically says, the appearance of his face, it's a verbless clause. So we have to throw the verb in there. The appearance of his face was other, or you can throw another verb in here. The appearance of his face changed.
An interesting note, Marilyn Berberga has done a classic kind of lexicon for the vocabulary of the New Testament through the Septuagint and the Classical Greek. And her article on Metamorpho, she emphasizes how it's using Classical Greek of human change in animals and that kind of thing. Her comment about Luke excluding this word is that he did not want to use a word that could invite comparison with the pagan ideas of transformation. So Luke deliberately omitted it, not to, because Luke is, of course, his scheme is to write to people who are not of Jewish background, so to speak, and he wants to omit any possible confusion with typical classical Greek.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I wasn't aware of that, article or person's, research on it, that. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
That would be like the Greek gods or.
Yeah, the human thought interaction thing,
Yes.
like the Iliad and the Odyssey and the crazy things here.
Even though they do gods. You know.
Okay, so. Any other questions about verses 2 through 3?
So it's interesting because the Common English Bible, I think,
Yep.
and New International Version, it Luke described the appearance of Jesus as bright as lightning. And I don't see that in any of the versions that you used here, these three.
No.
What translates,
That's a Luke.
Huh?
what's the translation you used?
I'm using the new Revised Standard Version. Yeah, I should put that on there, but I did updated edition. So where does that appear? Paul, like,
That's in Luke verse 29.
yeah,
When it says, his clothes became dazzling white.
yeah,
And this says his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. That's in the New International Version, and then the Common English Bible says his clothes flashed white like lightning.
Yeah.
So where the word lightning comes in.
well, I didn't bring my computer, so I can't look at the Greek. I don't think the word lightning is there, but it's their way of giving a thought for thought translation to dazzling white. So they're trying to explain what that is. Matthew and Mark say it's a white that no cloth refiner on earth could manufacture. And Luke, well, some translations of Luke are saying that it's a white that's like lightning. Is that how they say it?
Yeah.
And that takes it out of what we can do. And it kind of brings it brings more nature into it as opposed to the supernatural. As I see it. But see, all versions here of this story, they're trying to make a point that the clothes of Jesus became. And if I remember some of the Greek of this, it's white exceedingly. So it's a white that we don't normally see. There is like lightning, and it's lightning white. Guess it would be if you see it in the sky. It's a flash, bright. So
I always have pictured in my mind, the white Christmas lights. Jesus is just covered in white Christmas lights.
yeah, I can see that going through your mind.
The Greek word is excess proto,
Okay,
Greek word for which.
and
well, is it like it's not white, it's
bright, gleam,
yeah,
a flash, gleam, like lightning, and that's mouse howling. Yeah. Yeah, it just has flash, gleam, like lightning, figurative of a white garment.
So we're really trying to, the translations are trying to bring into translation what this Greek word means. So as you see, we have different variations. Okay, let's move on to 4. And we can start this out. And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Now, all I want to say, just to start out, is if you look on the color coded handout, in Matthew, it's Moses and Elisha by order. Mark has Elijah first, then Moses, and then Luke has. So Matthew and Luke both have Moses first, so they're kind of going chronologically with the ancient Israelite story. But I think perhaps Mark has Elijah first because Elijah figures back into the story later.
I think it's interesting that Luke calls them men. But Mark and Matthew don't. They just said there appeared Moses and Elijah. But Luke says there appeared 2 men.
Yeah.
Moses and Elijah.
Yep. Well, they were man when they lived on this earth.
Was it like an epiphany or what's that word then? It's a word that you're human and you're angel too. Like those guys who came to Lot.
Get back to that.
Or the Norse had a word.
Well, I'm not sure what that, what he was referring to. Well, there is theophany, but that's when God. So, anyway,
So Elijah and Moses did not have dazzling clothes, it was only Jesus.
that's what we think, you know, or that's what the narrative doesn't say one way or the other, but we can infer.
Says it's not stated.
They appeared
It's not
as,
stated.
they appeared as normal humans then.
Well, according to Luke, perhaps. Let's stick with Mark though, and there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. So how they appeared, we don't know. But I think they're trying. They stress the fact that Jesus was transfigured and his clothes were, I'm just going to say, a dazzling white. Because Jesus is standing out more so than Moses and Elijah. So we remember we can't make the text say something that doesn't. So we want to know how Elijah and Moses appeared and what they look like. We just don't know. I got to say that to answer your question. Just what we have is what we have. Well, we ran out of time, so I'm sorry. But why do Elijah and Moses appear? Why is that important to Mark? There's a passage in Malachi 4:1-6 that talks about Elijah and Moses. So we'll pick that up next time. With undersigned. You told him?
And Ken and I go to ours and so I mean, it's
So you heard it. You made better.
I was a bit. Honest, it was fine. I got. I'm just.
Yeah.
But then she wasn't.
By the doctor, never mind is that just had a really bad storm.